Hi, and welcome to our Cannabis 101 Zoom Cannabis series. My name is Mari Geier. I am the owner of Nuts and Berries Neighborhood Market in Atlanta, Georgia. And today I will be speaking with you about cannabis and all things surrounding hemp, marijuana, and the types of products that are available to you as the consumer. So stay tuned and let's get ready to learn. Our Cannabis Zoom series is brought to you by Nuts and Berries Healthy Market and the 2022 Hemp Fest. This year's Hemp Fest will be held on April 16th from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Brookhaven location of Nuts and Berries. This is not just another pipe dream. This is the ultimate social cannabis experience. At Hemp Fest is a free event. There will be food with a food truck, CBD treats, a high tea bar where you can sample CBD beverages, education, including a low THC talk, a demonstration of cannabis-infused cooking, a lounge where you can sample strains of hemp, a maker's market where you can meet the vendors, giveaways, live music, massages, and we will even have sales on all the products in the store. The highlight of the Hemp Fest 2022 will be the Luna experience, featuring free Delta 8 gummies from 4 to 5 p.m., guided journaling from 5 to 6, and elevated painting from 6 to 7 p.m. Come experience cannabis in a brand new way. This isn't just any festival, it's the ultimate social cannabis experience. Join us on April 16th, 2022. Cannabis 101, our Cannabis Zoom series. What excites me most about cannabis, CBD specifically, is that it gives me the opportunity to educate you about this fantastic system in your own body, the endocannabinoid system. Discovered in the late 1980s and 1990s by researchers in Israel and the United States, this endogenous system is present in every mammal. By understanding how your choices, the food you eat, and your daily routine can impact this system, you can start down a road to living your best life, pain-free, anxiety-free, and full of joy. The stigma. One of the things that you'll see when someone starts to talk about the word cannabis is that it's often looked down upon. It's often thought of as a bad word. I like to use the word cannabis because it causes people to stop and listen to what you're about to say. But way back in the 1930s, there were a couple of guys that really weren't all about cannabis. And so they started this Reefer Madness campaign. And as you can see, these advertisements talk about how you're a sinner and you're going to hell. That they call marijuana the devil's harvest, and they say that it makes women crazy. And then, better yet, they portray images of devils and people that are criminals and going crazy, and how society is going to go to hell. And that was, for the past 80 years, the thought process around cannabis in the United States. So what are some common myths about cannabis? Using cannabis products make you lazy. That's how I was raised in the northeastern part of the United States, in Western Pennsylvania. We were taught that if you used cannabis, that you were going to be lazy. That, possibly the stereotype was caused by the use of the indica strain, which can sometimes be more sedating. Specifically, they talked about there's no medicinal value in cannabis. And now we know that that is completely incorrect. Smoking cannabis is bad for your lungs. Well, when you burn anything, there's some level of carcinogens are released. And when you inhale those carcinogens into your lungs, that can be harmful and even lead to cancer. But there are so many other ways that you can enjoy cannabis and get therapeutic benefit. Cannabis can kill you. There actually hasn't been a single death directly linked to botanical cannabis, but you've got to know your source. You can make sure that you never purchase something that is synthetic and that you don't know how it's being processed, because there can be other contaminants in the product. You would need to smoke almost 200 pounds within minutes to really cause you to get to the point where you weren't able to breathe. Cannabis is addictive. This is a big one. Addiction is a genetic issue, and it can go in many different directions. Cannabis actually has a low addictive value. On a scale where the people that measure addiction rank a 1 to 10, cannabis is very, very low. And the risk is less than caffeine or sugar or salt. And of course, you can't compare cannabis to heroin. Using cannabis is a gateway to other illegal drug use. Actually, cannabis is the gateway out of the pharmaceutical community. It is not necessarily a gateway into illegal drug use. And this is going to, again, depend on the person's likelihood and likeliness to have an addictive disorder. So why are we talking about all of this now? This is one of those things that I think that is important for us to think about. Is prior to 1936, cannabis was legal in the United States. George Washington grew hemp. They used hemp to make rope and for so many different things, and of course, for medicine. But then in 1936, this Reefer Madness campaign led by Harry Anslinger began. And by the end of 1936, all the states in the United States had enacted some kind of a law to regulate marijuana. And then over the next 30 to 40 years, there had been some research, but most of it happened outside of the United States. In 1940, a Harvard chemist actually discovered THC, but he didn't even know it. Most of the research that happened on cannabis happened in Israel by what a lot of us call the godfather of cannabis, and that is Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. He identified the molecular structure of CBD in 1946. And then the first lab tests were done in 1946. Y'all, that is so long ago. And we are just now starting to embrace CBD. Dr. Mechoulam identified THC, isolated it in the lab in 1964. And in 1970, the Controlled Substance Act in the United States made it illegal to grow cannabis in any form. So from 1936 to 1970, there was some growth, but in 1970, you couldn't even grow it in the United States. So from 1970 until the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there was nothing happening with cannabis in our country. So that's a long time. In the late 1980s, this thing called the endocannabinoid system was discovered. And y'all, this is really what I get super jazzed about, because the endocannabinoid system is this really neat thing that we have in our body. Here's a timeline of this system that exists in our body. So we all know about our circulatory system. We've heard of our nervous system. We've heard of our immune system. We know that we have a musculoskeletal system that keeps our bones upright. But do you know that you have an endocannabinoid system? Everyone has it. If you're a mammal, you've got one. In 1988, the CB1 receptor, this is one part of our endocannabinoid system, was discovered. 1992, anandamide, that is the chemical that we produce as human beings that binds to the CB1 receptor, was discovered. 1993, the CB2, 1995, 2AG that binds to the CB2. These are all things that happen within our body. The enzymes that break down our phytochemicals or our endogenous chemicals, and then a bunch of other parts of the endocannabinoid system were discovered over the course of the next 20 plus years. Interestingly enough, in 2004, clinical endocannabinoid deficiency was discovered or named. 2004 to 2022, that's 18 full years, y'all. And I tell you that we are still not understanding the extent of endocannabinoid deficiency in our country. It is one of the things that I think plagues most adults. And because we are so stressed, because we are dealing with so many issues in our day-to-day lives, we need our endogenous cannabinoids more than ever. So when did it become legal again? Because now you see it on the shelves of your health food store, like nuts and berries. You see it in the news. You hear about marijuana and legalized cannabis. And so how did that happen? Well, in 1996, California legalized medical marijuana. So they were the first state to legalize medical marijuana. So basically from 1970 until 1996, that's 16 full years, nothing was grown in the United States legally. In 2000, Colorado became the 7th state to legalize marijuana. In 2012, a very interesting thing occurred, and this is really where our story starts at Nuts and Berries. In 2012, the Stanley brothers were cannabis growers in Colorado, and they have been growing marijuana medicinally for several years. They recognized that they had this strain that had high amounts of CBD in it and low amounts of THC. It didn't get people high. They called it hippies disappointment, which was really a funny name. But what they found is that the CBD actually helped little kids who had nervous system and seizure disorders. And there was this one little girl in particular, her name was Charlotte Figge. She was very sick. She had hundreds of seizures every day. And her parents fought to get her out to Colorado, and she met the Stanley brothers. They started administering oil from this hippies disappointment plant, and her seizures went from like 100 plus a day down to none. She lived just so many more years of her life, as normal as someone with a seizure disorder like hers could be, because of this CBD oil that the Stanley brothers grew. And they renamed this strain Charlotte's Web. Today on our shelves at Nuts and Berries, you'll see Charlotte's Web hemp-derived CBD products. And that came from the genetics of the Charlotte's Web plant, which is really super exciting. Now, this all really took off in 2013 when Dr. Sanjay Gupta published the Weed series. And you can look at that on the internet, just type in Sanjay Gupta and weed, and you'll get to watch it for free. And it's a really compelling story about how he changed his mind after meeting Charlotte and after meeting the Stanley brothers. And he stopped looking at weed as the devil's lettuce, and he started looking at it as medicine. And right then and there, the argument that cannabis isn't medicine was gone. So that's in 2012. Now we're 10 years later, y'all, 10 years later, and cannabis still isn't federally legal. In 2014, there was a farm bill that was passed, and for universities and state agencies to grow industrial hemp, this bill allowed them to create products, and those products to then be sold in legal markets, so long as the THC levels in the cannabis hemp product was below 0.3%. Then in 2015, Haley's Hope Act allowed for possession of medical marijuana in the state of Georgia, which was very interesting. 2015, we're in 2022. The state of Georgia still does not have a distribution network or growth for medicinal marijuana. That is how slow this country is to let go of propaganda. And we were brainwashed by the Reefer Madness, Harry Anslinger propaganda campaign from 1936 and 1937 and 1938. Y'all, that is so long ago. It is unacceptable. And now we have to make the change. We have to change our minds and make the decision to change our minds. So in 2017, Georgia added 6 more conditions, and that's where I'm at, 6 more conditions. And really what I want you to see is how slow this moves to their list of medical marijuana options, but you still couldn't buy the product or grow the product in the state. So how do you get it? You can't legally. So you have to do something that's potentially illegal. In 2018, the first FDA-approved CBD drug, Epidiolex, was created or approved. And so Epidiolex is a CBD isolate product that is used to treat just a few different types of seizure disorders. In 2018, December of 2018, then President Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill. And this was a big deal. This was the biggest deal. And this is why we see so much. This is 4 years ago. It legalized the growth of industrial hemp on a federal level. And it defined industrial hemp as cannabis sativa that has THC levels at the dry weight below 0.3%. And that's going to be a really big deal as we talk about our series going forward. Next week, we're going to talk about legal Delta-9 and how that's possible. That's a big deal. And that 0.3% by dry weight THC has a lot to do with it. So far in 2022, there are 39 states and the District of Columbia that have legalized high THC cannabis for medicinal use only. 19 states and the District of Columbia have recreational adult use programs. Sometimes the medicinal and adult use programs are different. Hemp-derived products are federally legal and can be transported across state lines. And in 2022, hemp-derived Delta-8 THC is available in 26 states and in Washington, D.C., including at Nuts and Berries. So really, this is the exciting time. Look at these wonderful people. This little girl, Charlotte Spiggy, she really is the face of the CBD campaign in the United States. This is the Stanley brothers and their family. What a big family, all committed to the health of people and using cannabis to help people become more healthy. We even have Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg partnering up to sell CBD products. And of course, we've got a local company, a small business, putting on a hemp fest that is 100% legal. And everything that happens at this hemp fest will be with legal products that you can buy that are safe and effective for adults to use. So let's talk a little bit about hemp versus marijuana. Cannabis, it is all one plant. Super important for you to recognize that, because y'all, this tall looking weed on the left is industrial hemp. And on the right, where you see the greenhouse, that is hemp that's grown for CBD flower or marijuana. So you can see right here, the tall plant on the left is the hemp or industrial hemp that is typically grown for its leaves and stalks and stems. And then on the right, you can see the marijuana or the CBD hemp plants. So cannabis, it's all one plant. Hemp, industrial hemp, and marijuana are the same plant with the scientific name of cannabis. They're not cousins, but they differ botanically and in how they are grown. Industrial hemp is typically grown in an open field using relatively organic cultivation methods and has historically been used for fiber produced from the stalks and food produced from the seeds. The botanical varieties are taller, typically with narrow leaves. Marijuana is grown for the flower buds. Typically, these plants are bushier and cultivated for optimal THC and terpene content. Marijuana is typically grown indoors so as to control the environment. Botanically, these plants have been hybridized so many times that they are a combination of cannabis sativa and cannabis indica. Hemp grown for CBD tends to be a hybrid of marijuana varieties and industrial hemp varieties that produce very low levels of THC, again, below 0.3%, but can be grown in a more compact manner with a focus on cannabinoid production rather than fiber production. Why do we say our CBD is derived from hemp? It's a legality issue. And then, people say, can you have marijuana derived from CBD? And the answer is absolutely yes, you can. In the final product, for it to be legal, the concentration of Delta-9 THC must be below 0.3% by dry weight and be derived from hemp grown with harvested levels of Delta-9 below 0.3%. So let's talk briefly about the plant itself. So you have your cannabis plant, and you've got the stalk, you've got your seeds. You can see that the leaves, if you look at the different leaves, you have broad leaves, you have more narrow leaves. So there's a great variation in the leaves. And then you have the flower buds. On the flower buds, you have these really cool things called trichomes. And glandular trichomes are the plant's phytochemical factories. The medicine in cannabis is made there. And if you think about the cannabis plant as a factory for the creation of dozens of different compounds called cannabinoids and terpenes, phytochemicals are these cannabinoids and terpenes that are made in the trichomes. Some cannabinoids that you've probably heard about, delta-9, THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, CBC, delta-8, THC, CBDA, THCA, CBGA, THCV, CBDV, and then delta-10 THC, HHC, and THCO, as well as terpenes. So you can see here in this kind of basic cannabinoid guide that there are some major cannabinoids, and CBD is the one that you're going to hear the most about recently. THC is the cannabinoid that actually gets you high. CBD is the cannabinoid that you hear so much about, and there are so many CBD products. Now, they're not all created the same, and we will, in our last of the 4 series, Cannabis Zoom series, talk about different products and which product might be right for you. But for this point, I just kind of want you to see that there are many different reasons why someone would use a CBD product. It has antioxidant properties. The CBD, the chemical, it can cause drowsiness if taken in large doses. It can decrease seizures. It can increase appetite. It can be a muscle relaxant, nausea relief, pain relief, and reduce anxiety. And that's just like 8 of 60 different things that CBD does in the body. And then CBG does some different things. It has some digestive support. It has some blood pressure regulation. CBC, which is a much smaller cannabinoid in terms of percentage in the plant, has some nausea relief. It has some anti-inflammatory properties. CBN, which is a cannabinoid that you hear a lot about when you talk about cannabis, and a lot of things that we hear about CBN are not backed by science, but are anecdotal. And so that means that people are generally giving their experience and sharing their experience, but it can cause drowsiness. And that's what most people recognize CBN for. But it has anti-anxiety, anti-inflammatory properties, which are really cool. We'll talk a little bit about those in a minute. THC, of course, this is what gets you high. This is the chemical that binds in your brain and causes you to have that euphoric high feeling. So it has anti-inflammatory properties. It has muscle relaxant properties. A lot of people will use THC for nausea relief when they're taking chemotherapy. It is psychotropic, though. It does bind in the brain, so it causes you to have some cognitive impairment. And then THCV is a very minor cannabinoid, but it has some really cool properties that we'll talk about in just a minute, including some appetite suppression properties. So let's talk a little bit about how all of these parts of the cannabis plant work in your body. As I alluded to earlier, our bodies have this really cool system called the endocannabinoid system. This is the biological system in our body that's capable of interacting with compounds that are in the cannabis plant. So we call those compounds in the cannabis plant phytocannabinoids, the cannabinoids that our bodies make, because yes, our bodies make these compounds called cannabinoids. We call those endocannabinoids, endogenous, so we make them. The endocannabinoid system is responsible for helping the body find balance. And this is what's so powerful about full spectrum CBD products, is that if your body is out of balance, if your body is in a state of dis-ease, it is absolutely key to think about how you can get your body back into balance. So whether it's your nervous system or your immune system, or you're inflamed and your immune system is out of whack, CBD products and your endocannabinoid system working together can help bring your body back into balance and help you move out of a state of dis-ease. That's absolutely key in today's society. So something to think about just briefly is there are three components to the system. And this is what is important for us as we're learning how these phytocannabinoids from cannabis work in the body. You have receptors that exist all throughout the body called the CB1 and the CB2 receptors. The CB1 receptors are primarily located in your brain. The CB2 receptors are primarily located throughout the body and in the immune system. However, we are finding that there are CB2 receptors that are modulating inflammation in the brain and causing some neuroprotective properties in our body, which is really cool. And then we have these endogenous cannabinoids. We have one called anandamide and one called 2-AG. And then, of course, enzymes that break down and build up these enzymes. That's how our body works. Let's talk a little bit about these natural cannabinoids, because people say, oh, I don't want to take any drugs. I don't, my body can do its own work. And yes, in theory, our bodies are built to be able to heal themselves. However, the environment and life and poor food quality, not just in poor areas of the world, but even in the richest countries in the United States, our food system is broken. In conventionally grown produce and in conventionally raised farm animals, there is almost no nutrition. So we're eating these things to fuel our bodies, but we're not really fueling our bodies. And so we have these natural cannabinoids that if we did everything right and we ate all of the food that had really good nutrition in it, we would probably be able to produce our own cannabinoids and we might not need so much cannabis. We might use it just for recreation. But because the United States has such a poor food system, we have a problem with anandamide. We have what's called an anandamide deficiency problem. And about 80% of Americans are anandamide deficient. That means we don't produce enough or we don't keep enough. And so let's talk a little bit about these cannabinoids. A cannabinoid is a class of chemical compounds that occurs naturally in the human body, as well as in plants. They act on a group of receptors, but not just the receptors in our endocannabinoid system. They work on other receptors in our cells, including our pain receptors, our mood receptors. And so these cannabinoids, these chemical compounds, are lipid-based neurotransmitters. And essentially what that means is that they like fat. So when we take our CBD products, we should be taking them with some nuts or with some olive oil or some avocado, some fat-based food. Anandamide is taken from the Sanskrit word for joy, our body's version of THC. Y'all, we make our own happy chemical. It's our happy chemical. It's responsible for the runner's high. Anandamide levels increase naturally after 30 minutes of exercise. It's regulated by an enzyme called FAAH, and unbalanced anandamides cause anything from stress to depression. It's a big scale. CBD, the chemical CBD that comes from the cannabis plant, the phytocannabinoid, actually inhibits this FAAH enzyme from breaking down anandamide, thus allowing us to keep more of our own happy chemical. So CBD doesn't actually do the work. It allows our body to do the work. That's pretty cool. 2-AG, or 2-arachidonyl glycerol, it's a very big word, so we call it 2-AG. Its primary binding function is in the CB2 receptor. So it's going to be modulating inflammation. It plays an important role in the regulation of appetite, immune function, and pain management. CBD actually causes an increased release of 2-AG. CBD, again, doesn't do the work. Your body does the work. But we have control over our endocannabinoid system. So as humans, we have the ability to do certain things to make our endocannabinoid system better without taking phytochemicals as our first choice. We can balance our omega-3s and omega-6s. So we could try Udo's oil. We can take fish oil. We can exercise. And I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm talking about moving 20 minutes every single day, whether it's walking, whether if you can't get out to walk, you just stand in place and lift your knees up, or you touch your toes, or if you are more inclined, getting on a bike or running. or lifting weights. All of those things increase the number of receptor sites. Expose yourself to the elements. This is a big one for so many of us. We sit in offices all day. Temperature exposure from getting outdoors year round actually helps make our endocannabinoid system work better. Go outside when it's cold. I'm not saying don't wear a jacket. I'm saying go outside when it's cold. Spend 10 to 15 minutes outside. Walk around, stand out there. Every morning when I walk my daughter to school in the wintertime, I say, we're priming our endocannabinoid system. We can do this while the other parents are sitting in cars waiting for the bus to come. And then when it's hot, go outside. And again, you don't have to go outside with 7 layers of clothes on. Put your tank top on and head outside 10 minutes. If you go outside between, generally 10 and noon, and you allow your arms and your legs to be exposed to the sun, you'll also make your own natural vitamin D. Eat to support a healthy gut, including greens, herbs, and spices. Greens, herbs, and spices have this other thing that we find in cannabis called a terpene. Naturally occurring terpenes are in plants, all plants. And so the more plants that we eat, the more green plants that we eat and herbs and spices that we eat, the more natural terpenes we will be consuming. And in a minute, you're going to learn why that's important. Manage your stress. Well, that's so easy, right? We all got that down. We don't, but that's okay. Keep in mind that managing your stress, y'all, is really important. You can do that by just allowing yourself a minute a day to just breathe. Just set a timer on your phone and just breathe. Giving yourself the ability to go outside for a walk, trying a yoga class, that's tough, meditating. All of these things are so important to manage stress. And then when we can't manage stress, when we just can't find a way to manage stress or eat right or take our omegas or go outside, that's where phytochemicals come in. That is where CBD and THC and these other minor cannabinoids that you're learning about today come in. And they're oh so important. Let's talk about how these cannabinoids, terpenes, and other chemicals interact with the endocannabinoid system. First, I want to talk a little bit about recreation versus medicine. So many people say, I'm for medical marijuana, but I don't think recreational marijuana can be managed correctly. At Nuts and Berries, we think part of living a healthy lifestyle is creating a balance between work and play, between the serious parts in life and the light parts in life. While recreation is often looked upon as frivolous and not necessary, we actually believe it's a major factor in health and is essential for reducing stress and creating balance in the body. So while many people frown on recreational use of cannabis, we believe that cannabis to unwind and de-stress is part of a healthy lifestyle and a form of self-care and preventative medicine. I say that because we're going to be talking about THC in a couple of minutes, and we do sell THC products on our shelves at Nuts and Berries and on our website at www.nutsandberries.com. Why some of these products work really well and why they don't work have to do with something called the entourage effect. The entourage effect is a term first given by the same Israeli scientists that discovered the endocannabinoid system. Because remember, we're not doing any of this research in the United States to the degree that they are in other countries because of our federal prohibition that continues in 2022. These scientists described the way that hemp's cannabinoids and nutrients and other compounds that are found naturally in the cannabis plant work together in the body. CBD alone is great, but CBD with all its friends is so much better. So these compounds have a synergistic effect. When you combine them together, it's like 2 + 2 = 10 instead of 2 + 2 = 4. And here's a couple of examples. One mechanism of the entourage effect is when the molecules bind to several receptors at the same time, thereby enhancing effects. This is one of the reasons why THC is so powerful in the body, because not only does it bind to the CB1 and the CB2 receptor, but it also interacts with GPRs and TRP channels, causing pain management issues and inflammation issues and mood issues, causing us to be able to relieve those issues. Another way that the entourage effect is going on in our body is when molecules, which might not individually do much, enhance an active molecule. For example, if you take a full spectrum CBD or full spectrum THC product and you add additional limonene in, it actually allows for a mood boost or a focus boost. And pinene would actually, because pinene is a terpene that is a bronchial dilator, it would allow for you to be able to absorb more of the THC or CBD into your body. One other way that the entourage effect works is when a molecule that interacts with another molecule might neutralize it or change its action. And so when you consume THC by itself, it binds very strongly to the CB1 receptor. But if you combine CBD and THC together, CBD is actually what's called an allosteric modulator. And so it changes the shape of the CB1 receptor, thus causing THC to not be able to bind as frequently or with as great of an affinity. And so you don't get as high. And if you take too much THC, you can take extra CBD to help modulate or bring down that side effect of the high. So now we're going to talk about these specific cannabinoids and how they work in your body. The first one is the big one. That is CBD. Everybody loves it. And I actually think that this should be in most adults' regular routine at some level. CBD does so many things. It doesn't bind to the CB1 or the CB2 receptor, but it helps to modulate all these different things in the body. And that's what's so cool. The body does the work. CBD just supports the body to do that work. CBD helps regulate anandamide. We talked about that. CBD causes a reduction of blood flow to specific regions in the brain linked directly to anxiety, which helps to lower the body's response to stress. CBD acts as a serotonin receptor, and that influences symptoms of depression. It works on the endocannabinoid receptors on your skin to reduce inflammation and redness. CBD works to manage pain by modulating that CB2 receptor. It acts on the CB2 receptor also that exists in your gut and in your brain and works on reducing inflammation there. It can also work to reduce oxidative damage and as a neuroprotectant. And so that's so, so important, which is one of the benefits and how it works to regulate seizure disorders. CBG is the next cannabinoid we're going to talk about, because this is one of the cannabinoids that in 2020, so many farmers grew, and now there's an abundance of it readily available, and it's kind of a new up and coming cannabinoid. And the cool thing about CBG is that CBG in its form in the cannabis plant, before it's processed, before anything happens, it comes in an acetyl form, or CBGA. CBGA is what is called the mother cannabinoid. It is super cool. All cannabinoids can be produced from CBG in some form or another in the plant. Now, once you process the acetyl form or the acid form off of CBGA, you get CBG. And it works by binding to both receptors, where it's thought to strengthen the function of anandamide. So unlike THC, CBG doesn't have any psychotropic effects. So you're not going to get high, but you do get an anandamide feeling, or that happy feeling. So a lot of people will take CBG because they feel like it works to even their mood out and allow them to be clear and unfoggy during the time when they're consuming it. Users also report a sense of alertness and focus when they're taking CBG. CBG is able to reduce inflammation due to an affinity in the CB2 receptor without causing that psychotropic or psychoactivity like THC. It has something called selective signaling. So that means it works in different ways depending on which receptor that it's going to and what other cannabinoids in part of the entourage effect are there. It actually dampens the sympathetic nervous system, the serotonin receptor, which is the target of most antidepressant medications. And so it can increase GABA and serotonin levels in the brain. CBG is a real game changer for a lot of things, and it really can affect the way that we look at taking pharmaceuticals. So CBN is the next one we're going to talk about, cannabinol. And this is not, it doesn't normally occur in large quantities, if at all, in the cannabis plant. It actually is formed by the oxidation of THC. So over time, with light, with age, with heat, the exposure to oxygen, THC degrades into CBN. And this is one of those reasons why sometimes people that consume old cannabis get really tired. And that, that myth that we have that people that use cannabis are lazy. A lot of street weed, that have been on the black market is not necessarily the freshest stuff. And so it has typically more CBN in it. In fact, taking CBN may make you feel more uplifted if it's coming along with the other cannabinoids. CBN has shown to preserve mitochondrial function and prevent oxidative damage to the cells. So from an energy standpoint, CBN can be a very powerful cannabinoid. Now, CBD and CBN, when you combine them together, are effective for chronic muscle pain. There is some anecdotal evidence. Now, this is important to know, because the number one thing that everybody thinks about when they think about CBN is they think about sleep. And that is very interesting to me as someone who is constantly looking for research and constantly looking for, more information about these minor cannabinoids. Everybody in the world says CBN for sleep, but there is almost zero research that actually points to the mechanism of action on how CBN helps with sleep. So there was some anecdotal evidence that you could take 2.5 to 5 milligrams of CBN, and that would be similar to a very popular sleep medication dose. But truly, that's all from users. There's no actual scientific double-blind studies with peer-reviewed research that's been done on it. And so it's just consumers telling other consumers. And that's one of the things we see a lot in the cannabis industry because of prohibition, because of the so many years of federal prohibition, which is, by the way, still going on. That's one of the things that we need to change so that we can get more research on these cannabinoids. But the fact of the matter is when you combine CBN with THC, that entourage effect does a really, really interesting thing, and it lends itself to a more sedative effect. And so that's what we're seeing whenever we're looking at CBN. CBC is a very minor cannabinoid that I'm just going to touch on very briefly because we don't have enough research, but it's coming. CBC binds to the TRPV1 and TRPA1 receptors linked to pain perception. When they bind, anandamide is released. This is huge. People that have chronic pain can combine CBC and CBD together, or a full spectrum CBD product with high amounts of CBC. And you can not only have mood elevating impact, you can also manage your pain. So it's really allowing our body to do that balance regulation that it needs. It also has some promise in dealing with things like edema and inflammation of the intestinal tract, but it only selectively binds to that CB2 receptor. It's a dose dependent, and it's dependent on the entourage effect, the other cannabinoids. So here are some other minor cannabinoids that you're going to be hearing more about in the coming days. CBDA modulates inflammation via the COX-2 pathway. It works on the 5-HT receptors in similar ways to SSRIs. Hey, guess what? CBDA has been on the shelves at Nuts and Berries from the beginning. Plus CBD sells a raw version. It is not decarboxylated. It is amazing. And everybody should have this in their cabinet. Replace your NSAIDs. This does not have the same impact on the liver and kidneys that NSAIDs do. Replace your NSAIDs, get the CBDA in there. And oh, hey, by the way, they just came out with a study on how CBDA combined with CBGA can help stop the reproduction of the COVID virus in your body. Yes, that's right. I did not make that up. That is a research study that did happen. And so it's a real thing. It's this COX-2 pathway that is modulated by the CBDA. And the CBG also, I'm going to jump down there, it reduces some enzyme production that can lead to a reduction in oxidative stress. And then when it's combined with CBDA using that entourage effect, it has some great protection against COVID transmission. THCA does not bind, it is not psychoactive. And again, CBDA, THCA, CBGA, these are the acetyl forms. So these are the forms that our cannabinoids exist when they're in the plant and before they are decarboxylated or extracted or heated. THCA has an anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective products. I can't wait till we can start putting THCA in juice and being able to juice raw cannabis because it is so powerful for your health and for balancing the body. It's just amazing. Something about the raw forms of CBDA, THCA, and CBGA and our bodies can absorb them better. It's like it recognizes it and says, yeah, man, yeah, this is what I want. And it uses it. And in so many ways, remember, our cannabinoids are doing like 200 plus things. We don't even know everything these cannabinoids can do yet. THCV is very interesting. I have begun to look into this for its usefulness in weight management and in management of obesity and type 2 diabetes. And so it upregulates energy metabolism. It's very interesting. It's in its infancy. CBDV has been kind of looked at around seizures. And this is just a different form of the cannabinoids in the body or in the plant. So let's talk about the one everybody wants to hear about. We're going to talk about THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. Now, not just any tetrahydrocannabinol. This is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. This is the cannabinoid that gets you high. Delta-9 THC is a cannabinoid that activates neurons responsible for pleasure, memory, and thinking. It binds with the CB1 receptors in the brain, and when that happens, you get high. Too much THC can overexcite the brain, and it can lead to anxiety, stress, and fear. Those are the side effects of THC. So in medicinal cannabis, we want to reduce those side effects. And so we do what's called microdosing. Rather than taking 10 milligrams of THC all at once, we take low amounts, 1 to 2 milligrams, 2 to 5 milligrams every couple of hours so that you can constantly have that support to your body, but you don't have all the binding causing you to be super high and causing, that could potentially lead to anxiety, stress, or fear. THC has been known to reduce nausea for chemotherapy by calming the nervous system in that vagus nerve. THC also has been known to support a good night's sleep because it's binding to the CB1 receptor. And anandamide deficient individuals, remember that's like 80% of the population in the United States. And quite frankly, like 80% of the people that walk into my health food store say, I can't sleep. They are looking for a THC product to help them sleep. And what it does is it binds that CB1 receptor and it causes a whole host of other things to happen in your body. Your body does the work. Your body does the work. Your body can heal itself. This is not, you have to take this for the rest of your life. Remember that. That's what I love about cannabis is that it is not something you should need for the rest of your life. Now, you might want to use it for relaxation. That's fine. THC combined with CB1 receptor to reduce the sensation of pain. And people that have chronic pain, I'll tell you, I have some experience with that and it stinks. And so, being able to have low doses of THC and combined really with high doses of CBD is really amazing to be able to manage chronic pain. Now, CBD versus THC, remember, CBD doesn't directly bind to that endocannabinoid system in your body, but rather it aids in the modulation of our own cannabinoids, which means that you don't have any negative biofeedback. Like eventually, when you take THC, because it's binding to your receptors, eventually your receptors are going to become dulled and you might need to take a little break. We call it an endocannabinoid cleansing. It's about a 48-hour process where you take no cannabinoids whatsoever. And then your body will reset itself. Guess what? Your body does the work. Yes, it does. Not the products, your body. THC binds firmly with the CB1 receptor. Now, that is why you get high. Now, this is the main reason why CBD makes you high or THC makes you high and CBD does not. CBD actually will change that. Like I said, it changes the shape of that CB1 receptor. So you don't get as high. And so when you do a lot of preparations in the medical community will be a 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio. And that is because the CBD will help to modulate that THC. Delta-8 THC or Delta-8 tetrahydrocannabinol. This is the new guy on the market, the new guy on the block, or the new kid on the block. Delta 8 THC is a minor cannabinoid that naturally occurs in very small amounts in the plant. However, those amounts are so small that you can't get them out. We can't get them out. It would be far too cost effective to get them out. And so Delta 8 is actually created from organic CBD isolate. So CBD is grown organically, and then it's extracted from the plant. And then there is a process called isomerization, which is a safe process. It's been done in the supplement industry for many, many years. It's how much of the vitamin D that we take is made from sheep's wool. It's turned into lanolin and then isomerized into vitamin D3. And so Delta 8 is created in a very similar way. Now, not all products are created the same. And so you have to remember there are good players and bad players out there, which is why working with a company like Nuts and Berries, who spends quite a long time vetting every company, making sure that the solvents that they're using are not only are they not in the product, the final product, but that they're not using solvents that are dangerous for the people creating the products, because some of these solvents are very, very toxic. And so we don't want that either. And so we want to make sure the practice is good all the way through. So Delta 8 THC, much like Delta 9 THC, will get you high, but to the lesser extent. Delta 8 is about 25 to 30%, or is about a third as potent as Delta 9. But it does all the same things. So it communicates with CB1 and CB2. It helps balance, pain, appetite, mood, inflammation, all of those things. Now, what is the difference? The main difference is just a bond. That's it. It's a chemical structure. One bond different. That's it. And because that bond is in a different place, it causes the THC to be about a third potent. So 25 milligrams of Delta 8 is equivalent to about 8 milligrams of Delta 9. Now, if you're a consumer of Delta 9 and you say you take edibles and you've tried a 10 milligram Delta 9 gummy and you got really, really stoned, that means your dose, or your starting dose, is probably going to be about 5 milligrams. And I'll be honest with you, somewhere between 3 and 5 milligrams is where most people that I know start of Delta 9 THC. So then you triple that and you go to 10 to 15 milligrams. And so there are a lot of products on the market that are 10 to 15 milligrams of Delta 8, and that is a great starting point. Delta 8 is more stable than Delta 9 because it is created, not naturally occurring. Delta 9 will degrade over time. Again, we talked about the CBN. Who should use Delta 8? Well, only adults. So you need to be 21 or older. You really, younger people's brains are not completely developed yet. And my main concern is that while our brains are developing, we don't necessarily need to be utilizing something that's binding to our cannabinoids. Now, CBD is safe all the way down to small children, but THC in larger quantities, there are some negative things, negative side effects that can happen. But adults should be using Delta 8. Now, here's the really big thing. Most people will say, why in the world would I want to take Delta 8 when I can take Delta 9? Well, here's the answer. I can tell you probably 7 out of 10 people who have tried Delta 9, THC, recreational marijuana, come to me and say, I don't like it. It scared me. I got anxious. I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. Time was slow. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't finish sentences. I just felt bad. Well, goodness, that is not how you should feel when you consume cannabis. You should feel good. That's the whole point. Anandamide, joy, happiness. So that means your dose was too high. And the beautiful thing about Delta 8 is because the affinity is so much less, you can take 10 milligrams of Delta 8 and that doesn't get you so stoned you can't move. It's actually quite a useful tool for the beginner. And that's one of the reasons why we sell Delta 8, because there are so many more beginners than there are experienced people. Who else should use Delta 8? Adults looking for relaxation at the end of the day. Adults that need help managing stress. I'm sure you don't have any stress, right? everyone has stress. So there's a lot of uses for delta-8. Struggling with a full night's sleep from anxiety-related insomnia or from pain, and then struggling with pain management. So I want to bring up a couple of things before I get into terpenes, because I know everybody's super excited about terpenes when it comes to cannabis. I actually think terpenes are kind of the unsung hero, but I want to just mention synthetic cannabinoids, because you will not see these synthetic cannabinoids on my shelf. I am just not happy with how they are made. More importantly, I don't think that they're necessary. These synthetic cannabinoids are all created to get around the current laws that we have. The broken legal system and the broken regulation system that is cannabis in the United States. And none of them have been tested in any way for any kind of research, very few at least. And also, I just think that they're a little bit, it just worries me that the bad players in these spaces are not doing their due diligence in making sure that the products are super clean and super safe. So delta-10 THC is another analog of delta-9 THC. It's way less potent. It's even less potent than delta-8. It's created to be an extension in states where delta-8 was made illegal. HHC is a hydrogenated form of delta-9 THC. So they add 2 hydrogen molecules to the delta-9 THC. It's also less potent. It's created to be a product extension. But hey, guess what? Where are you getting that delta-9 at that you're making the HHC from? That's my question to all of these people, because if you're going legal hemp, then you have 0.3% THC. Yes, you can distill out that THC, but it's not a lot. So it should be very, very expensive, and HHC is not as expensive. So I think it's actually being made from delta-8, which means that there's an additional step put in, and I'm just not sure about that step in terms of its safety. THCO, I definitely don't like this. It is 3 times more potent than THC, delta-9 THC. I don't understand why anybody needs this. I really struggle with this in terms of balance and in terms of health and in terms of wellness. But most importantly, it is super dangerous to make. So it just worries me about both the people making it on, and if it goes large scale, how that's going to, impact things. But more importantly, I see enough struggle with delta-9 THC in the general population. I just don't think that this is a great product for the general population. And the other thing is it's synthesized from delta-9 THC. Again, how is that happening, and why isn't this 10 times more expensive? Delta-9 is a minor cannabinoid when it comes to hemp. And so if it comes from marijuana, it's a different story, but that's not what's happening in order for it to be legal. Again, this is just another product that's created as an extension in states where delta-8 was made illegal. I suggest you stay away from these synthetic cannabinoids. We have all the cannabinoids you need, all the delta-8, and now legal delta-9 and nuts and berries. You can pick those up any day you want. Let's talk about terpenes. This is more fun. Terpenes act on receptors and neurotransmitters. They come from plants. They combine with or dissolve in lipids and fats. They can act as serotonin uptake inhibitors. They can create dopamine activity. All this is like, let's be happy. They work like Prozac, that let's be happy. So this is where when I say eat your vegetables, eat your herbs. Herbs, vegetables, plants have terpenes. You get them naturally, but they also come in the cannabis plant. Now, there's nowhere near enough research done on this because there isn't money to be made in plant medicine that people can do on their own. So the pharmaceutical industry doesn't invest as much money in this. But what we do know is that terpenes produce the scent, the flavor, and sometimes the direction of the high, whereas the THC produces that buzz. So when I say the direction of the high, a sedating terpene like linalool might lend you a more restful sleepful night, whereas a stimulating or an uplifting cannabinoid like linalool might allow you to be more focused and uplifted during the day. When it comes to CBD, the terpene profile in the plant is often responsible for its balancing capacity, including circulation, neurological function, cell permeability, inflammation response. Myrcene a lot of times will help pull the cannabinoids into the cells. So that's that entourage effect working. The soil type, temperature, and location where the cannabis is cultivated will determine the profile of the plant. So plants grown in Oregon, the same exact genetic material grown in another state, like say Georgia, they produce completely different terpenes. Which terpenes do I need? Well, because of the entourage effect, again, it's not just CBD, but let's say you are using your CBD for anti-inflammatory purposes. You would want to probably have a product that has high levels of beta caryophyllene and beta humulene. Now, these are two ancient Chinese terpenes that have been used for inflammation purposes for centuries. The terpene content can also alter how the CBD oil works for you. It's likely that it's not just the CBD in a full spectrum product, but the terpene profile that is contributing to the effects. And I will tell you, this is the #1 reason why people say CBD doesn't work for me, because they either got a product that was extracted using a method that burned the terpenes off. The terpenes burn off at a higher temperature, burned the terpenes off so they could get more CBD, or they used the wrong terpenes in their product. And so we have many products on our shelves, and we'll talk about that again in the weeks coming up, that'll allow you to pick your terpene profile along with CBD and THC. So here are some common terpenes that are found in cannabis, and look at these plants that they come from: black pepper, cardamom, citrus, lavender, pine, hops, sage, chamomile. Beta caryophyllene is found in black pepper. It has anti-inflammatory properties. It selectively binds to the CB2 receptor. This is so huge. Beta caryophyllene binds to that CB2 receptor, modulating inflammation and aiding in pain management. Myrcene has antiseptic, antioxidant, antidepressant, muscle relaxing properties. So heavy myrcene is a lot of times what is in a cannabis indica strain of marijuana, which makes you kind of have that couch lock. Limonene, antibacterial, antifungal. It is great for responding to infection, but it is also great for lifting kind of the spirits. It's also highly absorbable through inhalation. Now, you're going to find limonene in some of the diesel forms of cannabis. It's also found in the citrus plant. Linalool, this is like the terpene that everybody knows. Every single one of us knows that lavender, we put that on our baby's feet, we spray that on our pillow at night, it all helps us chill out and go to sleep. That's the linalool. That is the linalool. That's that terpene. It's an aromatic chemical found in plants, and linalool is found in lavender, but it's also found in cannabis. Charlotte's Web products have a higher amount of linalool, which is one of the reasons why they're great for nervous system issues. Pinene, mental focus and bronchial dilator, humongous. Pinene is great if you're going to inhale it. The pinene will actually help open up the blood vessels in the lungs. Humulene, this is found in like hops, and so it has some anti-inflammatory properties when it's blended with caryophyllene. For generations, that Chinese medicine has used it for inflammation. Terpenylene is found in sage and rosemary, and this is generally a central nervous system depressant. It also helps reduce anxiety. And alpha bisabolol is one of the ones that I love a lot. And this is found in German chamomile. Now, we all know that we have chamomile tea at the end of the day to calm us down. This is one of the things that's found in the Luna Sleep product, in the Luna Sleep Plus capsules, in high quantities of terpene that's found in that particular strain of hemp. So folks, as you can see, the endocannabinoid system is a really cool thing that exists in our body, and all of these chemicals that come from our cannabis plant can aid our body in finding balance. And so I thank you so much for your time today, for sitting and listening to this Cannabis Zoom series. And I hope that you have learned something. You can always email me at mary@nutsandberries.com. That's MARI @nutsandberries.com. Or you can go to our website to read more about cannabis, about hemp, about CBD and THC, or purchase products at www.nutsandberries.com. And don't forget, April 16th, 2022, Hemp Fest will be at Nuts and Berries. It is not just a pipe dream, it is the ultimate social cannabis experience with food, education, giveaways, and more. You will not want to miss the Luna experience. Free Delta 8 gummies from 4 to 5 p.m., guided journaling from 5 to 6 p.m., and elevated painting from 6 to 7 p.m. Listen to live music, get a massage, drink some CBD tea, come out and have a great time.